just a few seconds to start. Okay, we have the first participants. Maybe just a minute. Okay, I think we can start. Hi everyone, thanks for connecting tonight. I'm Daniela Cotimbo, founder and curator at Humanism. Humanism is an art program dedicated to the relationship between contemporary art and advanced technologies, in particular artificial intelligence. Tonight we are very happy to host this talk entitled The Eternal Body and curated by Elena Giulia Abbiatici. Elena is an art curator and researcher, winner with this project of the 10th edition of the Italian Council, the program of the Italian Ministry of Culture dedicated to supporting contemporary art. This very important project by Elena is an exploration of two senses, hearing and smell, that we don't normally perceive as primary and which instead represent a very important resource, often subject to human agents, such as, for example, pollution. I just want to say thank you to all the great guests of this talk and to Elena, of course. Thank you to all the participants too. And Elena, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Daniela. And thanks everyone who are listening to. This is the third public appointment of the Eternal Body. And so I want to thank Italian Council for supporting and believing in it, and of course, Humanism. Today meeting aims to investigate how technological development and biomedical engineering fits into human senses, recovering, implementing them. And the title of my research, The Eternal Body, is referred to the progress of biocybernetic medicine to promise immortality. This has given rise to a series of questions and reflection about the artificial becoming of our senses, and also about the interaction and possible interaction of the application of senses of other species to the human ones. So the research was moved from this kind of reflection, so the idea to reason about kind of dependencies and reflection and the relationship between senses, body, and machine, and also how are AI and robotics bridging the gap between the perception of humans and other living organisms. Also, what kind of subjectivity and environmental social consciousness can artificial devices create? And the curious thing is that it seems that sensors and bionic implant recognize better nature to humans without imagining it. Today we have 4 guests. Welcome Where Dogs Run, welcome Moon Ribas, welcome Robertina Šebjanič, and welcome Tom Tlalim. We will start our conversation with Where Dogs Run. Where Dogs Run is a collective of artists founded in 2000 in Yekaterinburg, Russia, by 4 artists: Olga Yonesteva, I probably pronounce it wrongly, Alexei Korkuhin, Vladislav Vulatosh, and Natalia Grekova. The group is characterized by the attention on the role of technology in everyday life, with a sarcastic and poetic reflection on the relationship between technology, biology, and life. Their works have been featured in numerous spaces at galleries and institutions, including Garage Museum of Contemporary Art, Moscow, the State Hermitage Museum, St. Petersburg, Beaux-Arts, Brussels, ZKM, Karlsruhe, and moreover. They would present 2 artwork that we selected for this occasion: Faces of Smell and Kerosene Chronicles Fungus. And the Where Dogs Run in these 2 artworks suggests how the sense of smell can become a tool for biometric control. The idea that governmental surveillance can use body odors and our breath for biometric tracking, going beyond fingerprint, facial recognition, and also retinal controls. These notes also how smell and breath, in their invisibility, can become the favorite terrain of surveillance capitalism. In fact, the industry of artificial olfactory sensors is developing intensively in recent years, although at the same time the sense of smell is still very complex to be measured, decoded, and reproduced. So I give the floor and I pass the floor to Where Dogs Run. Olga, welcome, Olga. Olga would be translated by Genia Aliyeva.
Добрый вечер, спасибо большое, Елена, за приглашение. Нам приятно участвовать в вашем событии, и все темы, которые вы поднимаете, нам ужасно интересны. И да, я хотела бы сейчас рассказать об одной очень старой работе и последней работе.
So thank you, everyone. Good evening. And I thank you, Elena, for inviting us. And we appreciate all the work that you are doing. And now we will start from the quite an old our work.
Работа «Лица запаха» делалась в 2011 году, и в тот момент сами компоненты, доступные нам, были из области либо контроля, технологий контроля, либо оборонной промышленности. И несмотря на то, что изначально наш интерес касался того, как можно было бы разработать технологию сохранения артефактов альфакторной культуры, сами медиа, доступные нам, создали некий совершенно иной контекст, и мы были вынуждены пересмотреть свои отношения.
And so the work is the Faces of the Smell that was done in 2011. And even though all the components were from the area of control or the technology of the defending industry, we were looking for something different. And at the end, the media created something that we needed, something different.
Естественным образом мы пришли к тому, что системное сохранение альфакторных данных возможно лишь как часть системы тотального контроля, и в этом и состояла печальная ирония.
In a natural way, we arrived to the conclusion that the preserving, systematical preserving of the data was only possible under the total system of total control, and that was our problem.
Мы решили обратиться к давно существующему, понятному и активно применяемому механизму воспроизведения визуальных данных, к фотороботу как модели для, как принципа, по которому можно было бы сохранять и альфакторные данные в памяти и воспроизводить.
So we decided to go towards the already well-known and well-used mechanism of the visual data that is preserved, like a photo robot that is created of the faces, and in order to preserve and contain.
Для этого мы создали массив датчиков, газоанализаторов, которые непрерывно исследуют пространство и человека, находящегося в нем, и ситуация в том фрагменте пространства, в котором находится человек, бесконечно меняется, но тем не менее мы привязали данные с газоанализаторов к данным о составе лица из полицейской программы «Фоторобот».
So for this, we created the huge massive of the sensors that analyzed gas that use the analyzation of the ambient of the environment and all the people around in the environment that changes constantly with the environment change constant, and in order to preserve all the data from that sensors.
Для определения способов соотнесения элементов лица с элементами библиотеки фоторобота мы искали исследования, связанные с болезнями, с восприятием, с тем, как трансформируются запахи нашей памяти.
And so we linked the sensors with the database of the faces that the police had, and we took these faces and we had to study the link between the illness and all the other different emotions and all the other different parameters in order to understand and to create different types of faces.
Сценарий взаимодействия с объектом такой: человек встает перед нюхательными трубками, воздух втягивается в камеру с набором датчиков газоанализаторов, и концентрация определенных летучих веществ влияет на вектор выбора, например, конкретный глаз или подбородка.
And so the mechanism of working with this machine was the following. So the person goes up in front of this machine with the tubes, and inhales the area that goes inside these camera, inside this tube that goes there and connects obviously with the sensors that reflect all the perception from this smell that comes out of the tubes.
Программа может двигаться либо в сторону уменьшения размера подбородка, либо в сторону его увеличения, в зависимости от показаний соответствующего датчика. И таким образом подбираются остальные элементы лица, и на выбор некоторых элементов влияет не один, а целый комплекс сенсоров.
And so the program can move to diminish or to increase the different parameters of a determined sensor in order to make the eyes smaller or bigger and make a chin bigger. It starts from the chin and it goes up, changing all the different elements of the face in order to get the one that is corresponding to the particular sensor.
Таким образом, лица конструируются совершенно нечеловеческим способом, и могут образовываться нереальные и абсурдные конструкты лица.
In this way, the faces are constructed in a completely unhuman way, and they can be created very different and very particular faces can be constructed with different elements.
Например, на вернисаже зритель с бокалом вина, как правило, получает портрет своего запаха, в котором ароматические углеводороды, этанол, метан и другие вещества сочетаются причудливо. И нужно, я хочу отдельно подчеркнуть, что лицо запаха совершенно никак не связано с внешностью человека.
For example, at an exposition, the visitor with a glass of wine will get all the different elements, including the smell, particular smell of wine and all of its components. So I want to underline that the smell face has nothing to do with the real appearance of the face.
Во время анализа газового состава программного конструирования лица на мониторе инсталляции человек наблюдает очень быструю смену лиц, и когда сборка завершается, лицо запаха застывает на мониторе, и оно полностью исчезает, как только человек отойдет.
So during the analysis of the gas composition and the program construction of the face on the monitor, on the screen, the installation, the person that stands in front of the machine can see the quick changing of different types of faces on this screen. And at the end, when the construction is done, the face is freezed and it's just one face staying there, and it will disappear as soon as the person gets far away from the machine.
Мы не создавали, естественно, реального средства слежения и контроля. Информация не сохраняется, и она полностью исчезает вместе с принудительной продувкой камеры. Мы лишь стремились показать, что мы не контролируем данные, которые мы рассеиваем вокруг себя, и что любые наши личные данные могут быть подвержены определенной типологизации и рассмотрены в оптике угрозы.
So we obviously didn't want to create the database of this or the real mean for the control or for following a person. The whole information is not preserved in the machine. It goes away as soon as the tubes goes with the flow of the air to be cleaned. So the face goes away at that moment. And we just wanted to show that our data, when we walk, we spread our data everywhere. And we just wanted to show that. And it can be actually potential danger for the control and for gathering all these data.
С одной стороны, конечно, на данный момент реальные технологии в этой области не позволяют совершать контроль, но нам кажется, что это станет следующей зоной противостояния за какие-то определенные степени контроля и за степени свободы.
Now, obviously, there are no means, no technical means that can allow control people through these data, through the smell basis. But we think that it would be possible that in the future, this can be one of the ways to get the information and to eliminate the freedom and to get more control over people.
Это была наша первая сложная работа, связанная с обонянием, и я хотела бы упомянуть еще о последней, которая больше обращена уже к истории, связанной с химической коммуникацией. Называется «Керосиновые хроники грипп».
And so this was our first work linked to the smell, to the olfactory system, but there was another one later, which I want to mention here as well. That's called Kerosene Chronicles and Fungus.
Мы сделали эту работу для выставки «Гидроискусство новых медиа» в контексте экотревожности. Робертина как раз принимала в ней тоже участие, мы очень рады ее здесь видеть. И я сначала расскажу о самом организме, который стал главным героем этой нашей работы.
So we first presented it on the exposition of Gidro art, where Robertina as well took part, and we thank her for that. So I want to tell first of all the concept of this work.
Речь идет о микромицете технофиле. В просторечии его называют керосиновый гриб, нефтяной, реактивный или топливный. И он живет внутри топливных баков, питаясь авиационным керосином или дизельным топливом. И в случае удачного размножения...
Простите, да. Okay, so first of all, I would like to speak about this basic of this research, and it's the fungus, the mycena fungus that lives. It can be called as well as a kerosene fungus or oil fungus, a reactive fungus, and it lived in the basically in the fuel tanks.
В случае удачного размножения керосиновый гриб может вывести полностью самолет из эксплуатации, и он был в 60-х причиной ряда авиакатастроф.
So during the course of its spread, the fungus can completely make a dysfunction on the oil, on the petroleum and diesel, and can actually cause different accidents in the airplanes.
Сейчас выявлены еще более активные штаммы керосинового гриба, и наш научный консультант проекта Анастасия Кривушина называет керосиновый гриб наиболее активным и ярким представителем микромицетов и технофилов.
And so now there are even more active strains of this kerosene fungus, and our consultant, scientific consultant Anastasia Krivushina, calls this fungus the most dangerous and the most active one of the mycena fungus.
Керосиновый гриб оказался организмом наиболее заинтересованным в последствиях антропоцена. Он совершил дико быстрый эволюционный скачок, благодаря которому приобрел дикие преимущества относительно нас, например.
The kerosene fungus was very interested in the Anthropocene, and it got this very quick evolution and became more powerful over us, for example.
В процессе своего метаболизма керосиновый гриб изменяет запах топлива, в котором поселился, и поэтому мы смогли использовать это как отправную точку для моделирования ситуации, в которой возможна химическая коммуникация гриба и машины. И это дает возможность для построения химической коммуникации между ними.
So during the course of its metabolism, the fungus changes the smell of the fuel in which it is settled. And so it was a starting point for us to model the situation in which chemical interaction of the fungus and machine creates an opportunity for the chemical communication, interaction between robots.
Мы используем керосины как источник энергии для жизни гриба и как дополнительный источник энергии для машины, так как их интересы совпадают.
So we use the kerosene as the source of energy for the robot, for the machine, and for the fungus, because in this case their interests are the same, are matching.
В центре каждого из 4 роботов располагается резервуар с грибом, и данные о его метаболизме влияют на выбор стратегии робота.
In the center of each robot, there is a tank, a fuel tank with the fungus, and the data from the sensors, they give information about its metabolism.
В инсталляции существует внешний и внутренний газоанализ, и данные от микропицета могут запускать разные режимы, такие как сохранение энергии, убегание, альтруизм или пассивное ожидание.
So there are existing the external and internal analysis of gas inside the machine, and depending on the results of the sensors, of the data that the sensors give, there are different modes that can be activated in the machine, like the kerosene preservation, escape, or the hunt for more kerosene, or exploration or excess.
Грибомашины ищут друг друга по запаху, и в случае, то есть они направляются в сторону наибольшей концентрации паров керосина, и в случае, когда они находят друг друга, то их стратегии совпадают, то есть один готов отдать, а другой готов принять, то они вступают в ближний контакт, и один может откачать керосин у другого. А вот здесь на видео мы видим как раз процесс стыковки. Это рабочее видео.
Fungi machines use smell to find each other. From time to time they start moving, and they go mainly in the direction of the highest concentration of kerosene fumes. And if 2 robots have the matching strategies, so for example, one is prepared to give out altruism or submit, another to take kerosene, one robot can join with another, and on this video you can actually see the process of jointing and getting kerosene from one to another.
Сейчас вот само по себе зажигание огня имеет символическое использование керосина, так как речь, конечно, идет о прототипировании ситуации, но сама возможность или невозможность совпадения или несовпадения стратегий 2 взаимодействующих грибомашин, она создает такую непредсказуемость и сложность в отношениях между роботами. И мы можем говорить, что это прототипирование химической коммуникации.
So for now, the burner is just a symbolical one, the one inside the machine, but it obviously gives us the idea of the possibility of interacting or not interacting between the machines, gives us the idea of prototypes of the chemical interaction.
Сама по себе разработка химической коммуникации между биокиберорганизмами нам сейчас кажется очень важной, так как обоняние – это последняя сенсорная система, в которой в данный момент мы имеем хотя бы некоторые преимущества перед искусственными организмами. И в дальнейшем это позволит нам сохранить более или менее равноправное отношение с искусственными средами.
So for now,
Спасибо.
So for the chemical communication, between bio and cyber organisms seems very important to us. For now, olfaction remains our last sensory system, which still gives us some advantage over artificial sensory systems. And so this in the future can be the adventure and the positive thing, or the mechanism or artificial intelligence for us. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Olga. Thank you, Where Dogs Run, for this explanation. It's so extraordinary, this last work, Kerosene Chronicles in particular. I think that it's very interesting how you work with the kerosene as a balance between the robots and the fungus. So the idea that this kind of energy source from which is depending, our capital system is remarked in your work. And I think that it's interesting also to continue on this topic between the relationship between living organism and robots with Robertina Šebjanič. Welcome, Robertina. Robertina is a Slovenian artist whose work explores the biological, chemical, and political realities of aquatic environments. In her analysis, she uses the terms aquatocene and aquaforming to refer to the human impact on aquatic environments. She exhibited and performed at solo and group exhibitions at Ars Electronica, Linz, Cosmica Festival, Mexico City, Monom Berlin, Arts Laboratory Berlin, ZKM Karlsruhe, Republica Berlin, and moreover. Her works received awards and nomination at Prix Ars Electronica and Stars Prize. And the work she will present, Aurelia 1+ Hertz, Protoviva Generator, is since 2019 part of the BIP Electronic Art Collection, Spain. This Aurelia 1+ Hertz Protoviva Generator address possibilities of a coexistence between animals and machines, and in particular is interesting because it's a generative installation that works with a living organism like a jellyfish that then Robertina will present, surrounded by the myth of immortality. So I would pass the mic to Robertina, asking her to showing this interaction between jellyfish and the machine, and also how is possible to recover and to reinforce this idea of immortality thanks to the jellyfish in our reality and in a possible reality that is evolving in a strict contact with living organism and machine.
Yeah, Elena, thank you for this lovely presentation and intro, and I'm really glad to be here. I would just say a few notes, like I saw the exhibition Hydra because I took also part with one other work which I'm not presenting today, but I really enjoyed watching the robots from Where the Dogs Run, from Olga and her collective. So it was really interesting, to hear all this backstory also behind that. So it's really always good to have that visual and presentation also. But to focus more on Aurelia and the works which I will present, I will share my screen also. Is sharing okay?
Is it perfect? Yeah, we can well see.
You see?
Yeah, perfectly.
Okay, that's good. So for today's presentation, especially when you invited me, Elena, to speak about this, how these correlations between these different species and in general, how to rethink the life through AI and all these questions, which they're quite big questions, and it's really not easy to answer to them. I would say like this, like Aurelia is one of my first Aurelia 1+Hertz is one of my first quite in-depth researched works. And the back of the research actually happened in Izmir in Turkey, where I was collaborating together with scientists there in Marine Station, and we did lots of experiments. That was like quite interesting because there was like huge blooming of jellyfish it was actually February, similar time, February. And it was weird because, you know, this shouldn't be the time of the big blooms of this specific species, because it should not be so warm. And then I went more into researching also this kind of how the changes in ecology are also changing the habits and habits of specific animals. So this is like few words behind that. And then when developing the piece, I came across the mythology, which you referred to also, Elena, in this when you presented about the work. And this was like, I found out about one specific species of jellyfish, which is called immortals. And this is this Turimpius duhimi. It's like called immortal. It has the possibility to go from adulthood back into the polyp stage and just wait till environmental changes around this and parameters are getting back to the levels that it's suitable to it, and then it rises back, you know. So this was like one of these kind of triggers to think about what does it mean and how much we try to always understand other species, in the sense of like trying to figure it out how they work, the inner system, and then try to understand how this could be referred to human, which not always is a good principle, I would say. But this happens a lot, especially in this kind of range of biotechnological researchers, so on. So in the piece, I really wanted to present this duality between, you know, the species, which it is in the artificial environment of aquariums. And as a side note, the work, the animals where I exhibit or work with them, I always borrow them from the aquariums which they are near to it. So I try to make sure that, you know, the species which I bring there into the gallery are not like just coming out of the ocean or something like this, but there is lots of, you know, showing living inside of the galleries and so on. It can be always very complex question, you know. So there's lots of questions pumping up in between when I speak about the piece. And because, you know, the piece and the research, it took me some years to get the species, to understand the context and so on. So then I decided to present work in two different options, like variations. And in 2014, it was first premiered to this piece where the jellyfish and the robot, they are kind of coexisting in the same space. But the thing is that, you know, depending how the jellyfish are moving, the robot is moving. Okay. So it's like they are the one which they are giving the vitality to the system, and there is no interaction with the human. I really wanted to have the piece where the jellyfish are the ones which they are doing the interaction. And then I wanted to have the second variation of the piece, and this was more poetic, I would say, where me and jellyfish, we are together on the stage and we are performing together the sounds. And the sounds are, you know, like it's a mixture of the sounds compositions where I was like recording a lot with hydrophones. We did lots of sonification of the data also and so on. So the part of the composition is done by them, part by me. And on the end of the performance, I leave the stage and they stay alone. And this is kind of like my way of saying, you know, there's always other creatures which they stay longer, you know, because especially the jellyfish, they are like existing since 500 million years. the first fossils I find date into back there. And they very adapted to the living on this planet in aquatic environments, which for us is really unknown still. And if you want, I can play a bit of the video just to present a bit of the visuals also of the work. I will put the sound on, yeah.
Aurelia,
it's 3 minutes video, but we can jump it a bit.
Redefinition of the social values and possibilities offered by biotechnology in the time of Anthropocene. The performance Proto-Viva sonification looks into the attitude towards interspecies communication and cohabitation. The installation Proto-Viva generator deals with the biopolicy of prolonging life. For more than 500 million years, jellyfish are pulsating in the world's oceans and seas. Their numbers are rapidly growing, especially with the changes in the Earth's environment in the 21st century. Jellyfish are one of those rare organisms that seem perfectly suited to the Anthropocene era. They are the perfect evolutionary archive, showing us the potential development the future might bring. Some of the species are even immortal. The idea of eternal life is deeply embedded into human culture. The search for the mythical fountain of youth and immortality seems unending. Aurelia 1 Plus Hertz Proto-Viva generator addresses the biocybernetic possibilities of coexistence of animals and machines. The installation's two entities, jellyfish and robot, are separated, but if they merge into one, a question arises. Would it be able to live forever? The most substantial aims of Aurelia 1 Plus Hertz Proto-Viva sonification are to explore the phenomena of interspecies communication, sonification of the environment, and the underwater acoustic. The performance features a live-generated sound by the moon jellyfish and the performer. Sound loops consist of recordings and sonic experiments with jellyfish in a closed environment, and pre-recorded sounds of the jellyfish blooms at sea. These are mixed in generative sound, which is assembled into an immersive sonic and visual experience. Jellyfish are tracked with a Raspberry Pi camera. The camera measures data of contraction, movement, and interaction. In real time, the captured data is transformed into information, and a program provides navigation through the sound data archive of the recordings of previous experiments. Experiments had been carried out in the course of the residency and project Deep Blue at the Institute of Marine Science and Technologies in Izmir, Turkey. The sound navigated by the performer has been gathered with hydrophones during the underwater recordings of the jellyfish bloom at the shores of Izmir in February 2014. How can we better understand jellyfish and enhance the relationship between humans and other marine species? The odyssey into the exploration of interspecies communication is a way of discovering parameters to restore a deep relationship within all life, and it is key for a better understanding of the Earth's environment. There are still songs to sing beyond mankind.
So, I hope that this video gave a good intro into how the work is done. Elena,
yeah, it's perfect. I want only to say one thing to our audience. Maybe there is a passage not so clear that when I invited the Robertina Šebjanič and then when I found her work, I was searching for species that are able to survive to pollution, to a polluted environmental, and also species that like this kind of jellyfish were able to survive over 5 extinction. And then so it's interesting also that where Dr. Ran before spoke about this kind of fungus that lives in fuel tanks. So living this kind of fungus that lives real in polluted environment. And also I was interested to the possibility, this kind of possibility remove, to apply this kind of jellyfish to the biocybernetic medicine for human beings. Sorry to interrupt, but was only a passage to say to our audience.
No, but this is great. And also, Elena? Hello? Is everybody else here with me? I think Elena is a bit frozen, but I would just like to say that Elena also asked me to speak about one of my newest work, which I did in collaboration with Sofia Crespo and Felica McCormick. And just to say that, you know, that in this newest work, we went to rethink the possibilities of what is happening in ecological senses with some species and how, because of our human interaction, some species, they are dying out, you know. So we went to research more deeply about these specific shells, which they are fan shells, and they are really huge Pinna nobilis. They're like one of the biggest shells of the of Mediterranean in general, and also in Adriatic Sea. And more we worked on it, and more we dived into the waters and rethink what is happening with all this kind of changes. More we have been like looking into this how something that is like disappearing. It's also interesting to see that. So we just wanted to research with this piece where we went more into really working also with AI. So we gathered with Sofia and we gathered with Sofia and Pelican a lot of information, lots of data, you know, like we went to look into the specifics of North Adriatic Sea and understand the changes, environmental changes, and when the moments the shelf starts to disappear start to happen. So I will play just a bit of this newest work, which is presented many times as an immersive installation, which some photos which I jumped before, or show in different ways. This was when it's more like representation of the piece. It's more like I would say almost like visual and sound meditation about the species who are dying out and what could happen that these kind of extinctions would not happen anymore. So also in the piece by itself, the installation part is done in sustainable materials with bioplastic and so on. So we kind of try to rethink also not only representations and also how to use the AI in more sustainable ways, but also how to represent the artworks in sustainable with sustainable material. So I will jump a bit because the piece is long, but the visual material, we tried to work on that.
Wow.
Also, Elena is back with us. That's good.
Yeah, my connection was gone. Like that, the more Ribas before. Yeah.
As you said, you know, like the more we do, like after 2 years of Zooming, I think still is not always helpful. But yeah, so I was just showing briefly now also one of these latest pieces, Elena, which you asked me also to represent today, the aqua formings, and you know that I did together with Sofia and Pelican. So. So this is from me, my side. I hope it gives some good material also for the conversation for further also. And yeah, like there is always interesting to think how much we use and abuse the species. Yeah.
I love that the idea of immortality in the aquatic environment is not something that has a class dimension, not like for the human beings, because for now the idea of immortality, or we can say the possibility not to have access to biocybernetic medicine, bionic organs, or their re-oxygenating of our blood, for example, is something that is only a privilege of few rich. Instead,
yeah, but in the water requirements, you know, there is so many species, you know, like there is so many species.
Yeah, in fact, it's interesting that the Pinna nobilis has facing this kind of pandemic of the sea. Instead, the possibility of jellyfish and Aurelia aurita to survive to maybe another the sixth extinction. And I would love to ask you, and maybe we can also speak later when we will have some comments and questions from the public. And I invite again the public to be free to ask what they want, and don't stop with your imagination, because yeah, we are in a context with many guests from different fields, and we have for sure different perspective to develop. If you, Robertina, could a little bit spend some words about this kind of possibility of using the jellyfish tissue for the human beings. I don't know, I was very shocking by that aspect that you mentioned.
Yeah, there is, you know, actually in Asia, there's a huge market about creams, you know, and also L'Oreal in Europe and some other companies are using that, you know, as jellyfish in their tissues inside, they're like mostly water, you know, like we are watery beings, but they are more. So they are more than 95% water. And instead of that, they have like lots of collagen and so on. So all these kind of potential changes can happen really quickly with them. So regenerating of their body because of their inner structure is possible through all these kind of things. And that's why also there is lots of these ideas in the cosmetics companies to kind of use that, and they're using it already. And there's lots of creams. If you Google, there's lots of immortal creams for your immortal beauty, which I think is quite ridiculous sometimes. So or this kind of enhancement of life and wishful thinking of that is kind of like something which we are still hoping for to achieve as a species, as humans, I would say. But on the other hand, yeah. But okay. I will stop here because there is so much to say.
Yeah, we can go to Moon, maybe. Yeah, it's interesting, I think, to continue this conversation about the cooperation between human beings and machines, or better, human beings at different kind of sensors. So welcome, Moon Ribas. Moon Ribas is a Spanish avant-garde artist and cyber activist. Since 2007, media have described her as the world's first cyborg woman, or the world's first female cyborg artist. She is a contemporary choreographer, and her choreography are based on the exploration of an enlarged sensoriality thanks to implanted sensor or prostheses that she wore. Her artistic practice fits into the poetic of eventuality and time relativity. She is, in fact, best known for developing and implanting in her feet a seismic sensor connected to an online seismograph, online seismographs that vibrate whenever there is an earthquake in the planet. And she worked on earthquakes because she's a dancer, and so there is this connection reverberating with movement. She's the co-founder of the Cyborg Foundation, an international organization that encourages humans to become cyborgs with proper cyborg rights and promote cyborgism as an art movement. She's also the co-founder of Society, an association that gives voice to people with non-human identities and offers the development of new senses and organs in community. So welcome, Moon. The floor is yours.
Hello.
Hello.
You. Hi. Can you hear me?
Hi. Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thanks for the introduction. Okay. Gonna give presentation.
Yeah.
Cool.
So
great. Yeah. So yeah, as you said, I'm a choreographer, and I guess I was studying dance, and in a way, when you are in the studio dancing, you can create movement with your own body, but you can also find movement beyond humans. And I knew that if I united myself with technology, I could find these other movements around me that I not only create at the studio. So since 2007, I've been united to technology in order to perceive this more imperceptible movement. And I did some projects about the speed of the people I had in front, and then I wore some earrings to know if I had some presence behind my body. And I had all this experience of the movement I had around myself. But there was a point that I wanted to perceive a more universal movement. And I had this, because I didn't want that my sense of movement it depended on other people. I thought if I would be alone in the planet, how could I perceive movement? And I realized that the earth constantly moves, not only moves around itself and around the sun, but it constantly shakes through earthquakes. And then I thought it would be amazing to be united to this huge and natural movement that most of the time is imperceptible. And this is when I started to create the seismic sense, what I called. So I had some implants inside my feet that were connected to online seismographs. So whenever I got the data, I would get a vibration inside my feet. And depending on the intensity of the earthquake, the vibration would be more intense or less intense. And I call this, the seismic sense. At the beginning of feeling all these vibrations, of course, I had to get used to it. So if I was talking and I had these vibrations, maybe I would stop talking or would get very distracted in my conversations. When I was sleeping, I would wake up more often. I have to say that I usually get to sleep very easily, so I got used to it, so it worked for me. But some people that maybe have a very light sleep, it wouldn't work maybe for them. So it took me some time to get used to feeling all these vibrations constantly. But after a while, I got used to it, and a way that I had to describe it, it's like I added a new beat inside my body. I not only had the heartbeat, I also had the earth beat having its own rhythm inside my body. And I see this as cyborg art. For me, cyborg art would be like designing your own perception of reality. So the artwork of a cyborg artist would be the creation of a new sense and a new body part. There are many things that happen around us that we don't perceive, but if we extend our senses, maybe we can approach to them. And this, I see it as an art itself. The problem of cyborg art, I guess, is that the thing is that it happens inside the artist. So in a way, we are the only audience who can perceive this art, because we are the only ones who perceive this different design of reality. So in a way, cyborg art like the art happens inside the artist. We are like the audience and the museum and the art itself. But in order to share what I feel, I created some performances. One of them, it's called Waiting for Earthquakes. Put it so loud. And this is like a durational piece that it can last 10 minutes or it can last hours. And I usually do it in museums, and I stand still and I stand still in the museum. And then whenever there's an earthquake, I move according to the intensity of the earthquake. So in a way, it's like a duet between the earth and myself. So if there are no earthquakes during the performance, there will be no dance. Some festivals are always worried about it, but usually the earth keeps moving, so I end up moving somehow. So in a way, it's like the earth is the choreographer of the piece, and I'm just the interpreter of it. So it's like putting the earth itself in another context, like the artist of the piece. Another way that I have to share this is through percussion. I have this piece, it's called seismic percussion, and I have two ways of doing this. One is also based on real time. So depending on the movement of the tectonic plates, the rhythm of the piece would be intense or less intense. But I also create a scores based on the seismic activity that had happened in a specific place. For example, the first one I did was in Mexico. I researched all the earthquakes that had happened in Mexico in the last 50 years, and I put it all together in a piece that lasted around 10 minutes. And I played it in Mexico in front of the Mexicans, so their people could hear how their country had been moving seismically to the rhythm of the percussion. And yeah, as Elena said, I co-founded the Sci Foundation 2010 along with my childhood friend Neil Harbison, basically with three reasons. One was to help humans to become cyborgs. The other one was to defend cyborg art. And the other one was to defend cyborg rights, the right of deciding what senses and organs do you want to have. The word cyborg has been using in many different ways since it was coined. Actually, it was coined by Manfred Clance and Nathan Klein. NASA asked them to write an article, and they thought that we needed another word apart from bionic. And they thought, this was in the 60s, so they thought if it's in the human nature to keep exploring and to leave the Earth and to live on a space, we should, instead of living inside of spaceships, we should modify ourselves in order to survive in other environments. And then it's when they created the word cyborg. It's like the modification of oneself in order to survive in other environments. So I think I like this definition. So it's like the modification of oneself, maybe to understand better the planet we live in. But since it was coined, it has been used in many different ways. For me, it's being a cyborg, it's an identity. You don't need to have technology in your body in order to identify as a cyborg. But we feel that maybe there are different ways of being a cyborg. One could be a psychological cyborg, which is like the psychological union between technology and oneself. Maybe most of you are already psychological cyborgs. When your mobile phone is running out of battery, you say, I'm running out of battery, instead of saying, my mobile phone is running out of battery. So you have this psychological union between your phone and yourself. One could be a biological cyborg, which is like the physical union between cybernetics and yourself. One could be a neurological cyborg, which is like the modification of the brain and the mind because you've been united with technology for so long. And like last year, I came with a new term of being a cyborg. I had the implants for almost 7 years in my body. I had the seismic sense for a very long time. And I had this feeling that I needed a radical change to experience something very, very different. And the most radical thing I thought I could do was to take the implants out. I have to say I was more scared to take the implants out than to put them in, because I thought that everything would change a lot. And when I took them out, this strange thing happened, I thought everything would change, and actually I could still feel the vibrations for some months, even if I didn't have the implants inside. So I had a phantom effect, you know, like the people that if they had an accident, lose the limb, they still feel that they have the limb even if they don't have it. I had these effects, so I thought that maybe I was a phantom cyborg for a while. And then after some months, this effect went away, and now I'm thinking about new senses to explore. And also, yeah, as Elena mentioned, we also feel that we are trans-species because we have new senses and new body parts that are no longer defined as a human sense or human body part. A good example is Neil Harbison, my friend. He has an antenna implanted in his skull that transforms color into sound. Antennas are not human, are more related to the animal world. And actually, I don't know if I have time to, I'm talking very fast because I don't have time.
Don't worry.
Actually, there was an anecdote with Neil that he went to the hospital and asked if he could have this antenna implanted in his skull. And the hospital said, okay, you need to talk to a bioethical committee. So he gave a talk to a bioethical committee to the hospital. And at the end, they decided that it wouldn't be possible to do this in the hospital. One is that the reasons that were given to him, it was that it wasn't necessary, that it could be dangerous, and they were worried about the image. You know, if someone would come in as a man and walk out as a man with an antenna. And actually, it's very different, but we find a bit of similarities with what happened on the 20s and the 30s with the transgender community. If a man would feel that they had the body of a woman, they wanted to have some surgeries, the reasons that they were given to them were the same ones, that it wasn't necessary, that it could be dangerous, and they were worried about the image that it was produced to walk in as a man and walk out as a woman. So we hope that in the future it would be normal to have cyborg surgeries and to have new body parts and new senses. Some other projects that we worked on in the Cyborg Foundation is, for example, I actually have a tooth missing in my mouth, and Neil had another tooth missing in his mouth. And we were invited in Brazil to work for 2 weeks with 15 engineers to create something new. And then we had this idea, we worked with the dentist, we had this idea of putting an implant of each of us. When it wasn't like really implanted, it was, we could remove it. So Neil had a tooth inserted in his mouth, I had a tooth inserted in my mouth, and whenever he clicked, I would feel a vibration. Whenever I clicked, he would feel a vibration. And we both know the Morse code because we learned it for a performance. So we were actually able to communicate by clicking our mouth. So we call this the transcendental communication system. We did a little tryout. I was sitting on an end of a table and Neil was sitting in the other end of a table. The audience would write a word and it would be like, and then he would write the word, and it was like the first tryout of this type of communication. Actually, this tooth worked with Bluetooth, so it was actually a Bluetooth tooth for real. And then, yeah, actually this type of communication actually can work for people who can not move at all, or maybe also in a space because you don't need air to communicate with each other. Some other colleagues some other artists that are from Barcelona are also experiencing with this is, for example, Manel de Aguas. He has some things inside implanted. This is an old photo, but he has some things implanted in his head. And he actually can perceive the atmospheric pressure, the temperature, and the humidity. And if you know the atmospheric pressure, you can know if it's going to rain or if it's going to be sunny. So he actually feels the weather. He's actually the weatherman. He's connected to that. There's also Kyle Landra, and that he has some sensors that he can perceive the cosmic rays, and he also transformed these into music. Yeah, these are some examples of other sensors that we do in our studio. And just to say that, I guess it's very similar with all the other topics, but usually people, when think about other sensors, they think something very artificial. But actually, now that we identify ourselves as a cyborgs, we don't feel closer to robots or to machines. We actually feel closer to animals and to the planet itself. Sometimes if you think about new sensors, you can get inspired by a lot of natural elements, as jellyfish.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, I was surprised when I listened to one of interview that you presented at TED. Maybe I didn't remember which kind of TED, but this possibility, and also a marvelous image that we published on Arshake, on the article that was published some days ago, where your body is like how can I say, together with the deer, no? So the idea that there is this kind of tentaculus propagating from the body and installing with the part of other animals. And I think that is really interesting, this capacity to perceiving the other, whenever the other is the earth, whenever the earth is a cosmic ray, or the weather and the earthquakes. There is a point, maybe very interesting, that is how these kind of sensors can enlarge your consciousness, because you spoke also about the emotionally involvement that the seismic sensors create in you. So maybe you can spend some more about it.
I think it's about understanding our planet differently. If you, through your senses, you know where, I think it's, that's why I think it's art and philosophy, no? Because we are wondering where we are. It's like the basic questions. So for me, cyborg art, I feel like we are exploring our own planet in another way. And if you explore and you experience reality in a different way, maybe you understand the planet differently. Also, I think it's very different to know that the earth is moving, that actually to feel it, that it's constantly alive and it's actually a living organism that also evolves. I think it's really beautiful also to extend your senses and compare it to other realities, because I feel we live in a way that it's very human-centered. So to be able to connect with other ways of existing, I think it makes you realize that you're not alone in this planet, no? That there's other ways of existing and living, and I think this is enrichment.
And looking at your work, I was thinking to this kind of category, no, of ubiquity, be in different place in a moment. So how did you conceive, maybe you have thought, to this category of ubiquity, and also to the category of omnipresence and omniconscious, no? Because previously you wore also a 360 degree visor that allow you to perceive the world in front and behind. So there is this divine, we can say, category that through cyborg implants you can perceive.
Yeah, I don't know if divine.
Yeah, I mean, this idea, no, to be in different places is the divine of ubiquity, you know. It's always philosophically speaking, you know, But I was thinking about it, looking at your presentation.
Yeah, again, it's
maybe you never,
especially when, for example, when I'm performing and I feel that this, like, when I'm very concentrated waiting, and then there's I'm in Barcelona waiting, and there's an earthquake in Canada. I know that it's so far away on the other side of the planet. Your perception of that planet, it's like it's definitely changes. It's very different. I have this image in my head that sometimes when I'm waiting, I'm having these roots under my feet that go all over the planet, and through those roots I can feel what's going on in the other side of the planet. This is like how I imagine maybe this omnipresence, in my sense. I don't know, I think it's a very profound
question,
experience, and it's difficult to share it. I guess that's why we create artwork, to try to share what we feel.
Yeah, and I have a last question to Moon, and then we can continue with Tom Tlalim.
Okay.
So, ethically speaking, who is responsible for any accident that that this kind of sensors could cause? So maybe if the kaleidoscopic visor or also the seismic implant would cause you an accident, who is the responsible?
Oh, this is oneself. Okay. We don't collaborate specifically with a company or anything. I think it's every artist has its own experience and decide what they want to do. I mean, usually our ethical limit is like we would never modify an animal or a child. I think everyone has to decide what they want by themselves. So it's one's decision. I mean, if something, for example, if my implant, I would reject it. I mean, you can take it out. It's no. And before putting an implant, also we take a lot. We wear it outside for a long time to really know that we really want to have this, and if we get used to it. So it's a slow and long process. And it's a personal experience, and I think it's about it's about oneself. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for clarifying. And I think that in the future, this aspect of ethical question and who is responsible, if the AI or the human beings, would be always more frequent.
Definitely,
So I was thinking, if this kind of sensor would cause me an accident, who is that?
But it's complicated. I mean, definitely, if more people have more senses and more body fat, we will need new laws to protect these people with new senses and new body parts. Actually, we are working on it, like 5 basic rights of people with new senses.
Okay. No, I was thinking maybe I was driving a car and there is a great vibration, earth vibration, no?
Exactly.
This is only an example. No?
Well,
fortunately, you are safe.
Yeah, okay. But it would be your responsibility, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. Then welcome, Tom. Tom Tlalim, are we?
Hi, everyone. Yes, I'm here.
Yeah.
Hello, Elena.
Hello. Welcome, Tom Tlalim. He is the last guest of today's meetings. And then we have many questions that we will try to respond to. Tom Tlalim is an artist, a musician and writer whose work explores the relation between the senses, technology, ideology, and subjectivity. Tlalim's work is regularly exhibited internationally at the Victorian and Albert Museum, 15 Venice Architecture Biennale, Marrakesh Biennale, as well Transmediale and Aros. Tlalim's work was nominated for the Prix Ars Electronica and the Tiger Award at the International Film Festival Rotterdam. In 2016, he was artist in residence at the Victoria and Albert Museum, developing sound art with cochlear implant users. The title of this research is Tonotopia Music for Cochlear Implants, a sound art project where he collaborated with users of cochlear implants, exploring their hearing, listening with their digital ears. The project was exhibited at 2 shows at the Victorian and Albert Museum, and we will discuss about how cochlear implants change the perception of the users and what does it mean for them, the distinction between hearing and listening, and also how these cochlear implants distorted their perception of reality. So welcome, Tom.
Elena, hi everyone. Can you hear me well?
Yeah, perfectly as well.
Fantastic. Let me share my screen as well. And hopefully, oh, of course, sound. Are you able to see my screen?
Yeah, perfectly.
Brilliant. So thank you, Elena, and thanks for the lovely project meeting and the series of projects in your research. I've listened around to some of the previous meetings you've held. And I think, yeah, it's really nice to see a kind of project being developed that looks at kind of the contemporary views on the senses and sensory kind of development in the context of new technology and so on. This is an area that I've been fascinated by for many, many years. Also through my work as a performer, as a sound artist, and kind of collaborating with choreographers like Arkady Zaidas, working on kind of the political issues in the Middle East, specifically where I'm from, but also about how these kind of manifest in embodied sort of relationships and in our kind of way of inhabiting the body. So going through this kind of question of where does the politics begin? Where does conflict begin within ourselves, within our body, within our different kind of relationships with our surrounding, our environment, and also, of course, through that where we can develop synergies and connections and sort of. So I really enjoyed kind of Moon's idea of interspecies kind of relationship or becoming other species, which I think kind of speaks to that sort of question of the boundary and how we cross it. And this leads me to my project Tonotopia, listening through cochlear implants, which was I guess started with a kind of, was asking myself what would happen if I tried to create sort of sound art for ears that are different to mine, for a sense of hearing that is different to my own. I don't myself have a cochlear implant, but the kind of the drift was trying to work with people who do, and to see in what ways we can collaborate, and also how can we create a sound art that is not necessarily judged only aesthetically, but also kind of conceptually through that sort of question of intersensory translation, if you like. There's an interesting book by Seth Kim Cohen called well, In the Blink of an Ear, but the subtitle is interesting, towards non-cochlear sonic art, which kind of triggered my attention to this idea. kind of similarly to this idea of non-retinal art, which means a kind of conceptual art that doesn't really need to be perceived in order to be understood. He was interested in what would happen if we could conceptualize a sound art that doesn't need to necessarily be perceived with the senses in the same way. Where are the kind of areas in our perception of sound where we listen not necessarily with the cochlea itself? So I started working at the Victoria and Albert Museum in 2016. The project went on for about 2 years in residency there, where through Action on Hearing Loss, which is now called RNID, the Royal National Institute of the Deaf, which is a big charity in the UK, we reached out to people with cochlear implants to start this kind of artistic collaboration and co-design kind of process with them. Now, before I continue, I'd like to show a little video that maybe speaks to that question of how can we listen to each other without necessarily hearing each other. What is listening when we don't hear? Roland Barthes kind of famously made a distinction once between hearing and listening, saying, drawing on Freud, this idea of psychoanalytic listening. Listening is a psychological act and hearing is a physiological act. They make that sort of distinction. You can question that, and it's been problematized many times. But in this case, me and Sohei Lee, who's one of my participants, who's a sound artist herself, we met after the project ended as a kind of follow-up experiment to create a performance where we both deprive our listening. We both try and seal our ears. So she removes her cochlear implant, which means that she hears nothing at all. And I put on several kind of earplugs on top of each other and sealing headphones and so on. And we try and speak to each other through a translation, through a captioning software, which listens to us. So effectively, the public can hear us speak, but we can't hear each other. And we can only read what is going on the screen. So here's a little clip. I hope you can actually hear it, but please let me know if not.
Just focus on reading and communicating through text.
This is listening without hearing. Listening in different ways.
Smiley face. This is that would be cool if the machine recognizes different voices and colors differently. Color.
Call us. Question mark.
Color our text separate, different colors. So my words would be different color from your words.
Yes, but we also learn to leave gaps between our sentences.
Yes.
Or our sentences.
So we will take time to have conversation.
Okay, so as you can see, there's an interesting relationship going on, which I'm really curious about between the technology and our speech. So as we learn to use the software that listens to us and creates a caption based on our voice, we learn to speak differently in a way that sort of makes the software understand us better, which means speaking slower, perhaps on Americanizing our accent sometimes, or sometimes these are learning systems that sort of learn to recognize different speakers and their tendencies. But I think that sort of cyborgian, you could say, relationship between technology and us as subjects, let's say, are kind of us as users of that technology, in a way goes both ways. And I guess that sort of connects to some of Moon's ideas presented before, where it's not just about using technology, it's about perhaps the technology using us, or us modifying ourselves to use the technology. So there's evolution happening in all directions. Between us, this is also really interesting because there's dimensions of accent and dimensions of particular ways of using language. And also in a way, Sohei has an advantage over me because she has already been in that sort of translation space for many years, since she had been implanted with a device when she was about 8 or 10 years old. So for her, the process, and I'll jump here to her video in a second, for her, the process has been in evolution as well. Since she got the device, which was a very early version of commercially available devices as a child, without necessarily giving her consent in a full kind of way, but having her, basically her parents giving her consent for her because she's a child. There's all kinds of issues emerging from those questions of consent. I was also interested when meeting participants and having kind of long conversations with them about what are the kind of politics of consent? How do you actually agree to a specific company which has a different device, possibly a slightly different algorithm and a different kind of pathway towards updates in the future? How would it be possible to actually test or examine? Is it possible to actually know what it sounds like? And obviously this is not that simple. And it's interesting because here the kind of cyborg area space, if you like, or the bionic space, is an intermediate space between our bodies, or the body of the user, the subject, the patient, and those kind of medical industries that manufacture those devices, along with, in the UK, it's the NHS, the National Health Service, so government kind of institutions, government-funded institutions. So yeah, the ethical sort of conundrum within that space is really interesting. And I think part of it is this question of how do we ever know what does it sound like to be with a cochlear implant until we've actually implanted one and used it. In a way, it's not possible, arguably. This is a cochlear implant. This is a processor outside. I'll just explain briefly. It's implanted into the inside the cochlea itself, so you can see the kind of string is or kind of a prod with an array of electrodes is literally slid into the cochlea. Kind of looks like this. It's a kind of injection, you could say. What happens is when these electrodes transmit pulses, electrical pulses, directly onto the hearing nerve. But in order to do that, they need to be pushed into the cochlea. And as they are pushed into the cochlea, they actually kind of destroy the infrastructure that exists in there. And this means that by choosing to have the implant, if you had any kind of percentage of hearing before, that percentage will likely be lost. So this is a form of complete alteration of your sense of hearing, and also requires a kind of learning process that comes with it. So there's a very complex program of learning over years. And this is different for people who've had this in their early years, between the age of 3 and 5, or earlier when language actually develops, and then between people who've had it at a later age. Most of what the cochlear implant is designed to do is to enable hearing of speech. So music and sound art are kind of like an interesting area within those for people with cochlear implants, because music sounds very different to let's say organic biological hearing. I'm going to show a couple of images of the operation just to explain how it goes. So there's an incision behind the ear, which is followed by a kind of dent being dug into the skull. The external sort of receptor of the device is implanted in there under the skin, but it's quite a shallow part. And then the electrode itself is slid then through the skull into the cochlea. So this is roughly the kind of the operation bit of things. I'm going to go on to talk a little bit about what we did with cochlear implant users. So my initial preconception was that I would learn how this device works and what is the kind of logic of it technically, so I could sort of think about specific acoustics modeling that could help understand how to work, what is audible, what is not audible. But this did turn out to be a lot more complex once I've met the participants. And part of the complexity is the fact that you've got on the one hand the device, and on the other hand, the internal sort of nervous system that's inside the ear, and what is left of it, or what has been in operation before, what has been working and in what ways, and also the kind of history of listening that the person has. And here that's an interesting area as well, because the listening aspect of learning how to listen with the device is also depending a little bit on how much training the particular recipient has had with hearing language, for example. So there is a kind of tendency to recognize linguistic patterns if you already had learned it in the past as a listener. On the other hand, if you are in the critical age, early age, like 3 to 5 year old that I mentioned before, or actually 2 to 3 as well, your brain is also kind of like, in a way, open to discovering those connections more quickly. So there's a kind of sped up sense of learning, like we learn language as well. We've set up a studio at the V&A, the learning area, and we wanted to create a listening environment where we can work with those participants. 6 participants ended up joining the project. All of them kind of different ages, but all of them adults. And with each one, I did a kind of hour-long interview twice. So the first time was a bit more kind of introductory, and the second meeting was a lot more, in a way, free and kind of in-depth. We had all kinds of recording devices and media players, so we can explore and listen to sounds that they bring with them. Some brought artifacts, kind of sounding artifacts. Others brought all kinds of historical recordings, and some have brought some, leaves and all kinds of objects that made an impression on them in terms of the sound. Mm-hmm. Part of the residency was to record those sounds together and to talk about them. And a lot of things were discovered in those conversations. Here's one excerpt from a meeting with Ed Rex, who talks about discovering a new sound, that moment where let's have a listen.
It's been a long time since it's happened now, but every time I heard a new sound, I would hear a beeping. in my cochlear implant. So the first significant memory of that was actually 2 years later, after I had my switch on. I went to Portugal with my family, and the sun was setting. I was sat outside reading my book on the hammock, and all of a sudden I heard my cochlear implant going beep, 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 beep. So what's that? And then just turning around to see what it was, and then could hear some scratches like beep, beep, beep. And I thought, that's a new sound. My brain doesn't know what it is, and a completely new sound I would never ever heard before. And I kept trying to explain to them the pattern of those beeps, etc. And I'm like, there you go, beep, 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 scratch, scratch, beep. And they were like, oh, they didn't realise it was the grasshopper chirping. I never ever heard a grasshopper chirping before.
Wow.
It was just amazing. I just remember just sat there just going, wow, I can hear that. And then about half an hour later, those beeps and scratches suddenly turned itself into sound. So the actual, what you're hearing, the grasshopper now, is then what I'm hearing. So the beeps and scratches went away, and I could hear this sheep, 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 everything going on.
So what you're describing is a process of your brain learning to read grasshopper from those beeps, right?
Yeah.
Which is quite amazing.
Yeah.
This is like,
it was just great. And then
yeah, so this is an example of a participant describing the process of his brain learning how to listen to a specific sound and how to recognize a sound as an object, which I find fascinating as part of my research as well into listening and hearing, because this is a kind of meeting point between, if you use the Barthian definition of hearing being psychological, of listening being psychological and hearing being physiological, obviously cognitive psychology lies somewhere in between, but this is an area where the kind of the information, the data, if you like, becomes an experience, becomes a word or a concept or an idea. And this whole notion of priming became part of how I thought about the exhibition later on. This idea of the participation of visual language and sonic language and just language information in how we learn how to listen to things and listen for things, if you like. Another example is another participant. I can show his picture, actually.
Yeah, I think that we can present the last videos.
Okay.
And
yeah,
then
sure.
we can give.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So, describing, listening the sound of those beeps and then not knowing what it is, but then turning his head and seeing a video of a pianist playing piano on a video caused his brain to sort of connect the dots in this way as well. There are several videos recorded with different participants and different stories, which I'm now working on also as an article to kind of develop and bring out some of the threads that came out in those conversations and publish something about them. It's really interesting with Sohei, collaboration with Sohei is continuing. And one of the things that we're really interested in exploring together is this increasing introduction of data mining and kind of data technologies, data collection. I think it was Olga that mentioned total surveillance. So in this case, this is a biopolitical kind of data that's being harvested in real time, where you can kind of, you can opt in or opt out. You can disable data synchronization, but then you might not necessarily get all the features, such as intelligent sort of learning, adaptable filters that can improve your hearing. At the same, in certain locations, certain situations, more efficiently. At the same time, she's also describing sometimes being her hearing being interfered by these kind of intelligent filters that come in and sort of change the attention of what she can hear between foreground and background. So there's another kind of interesting learning space that's developed between the actual, your kind of interpretation of the signals and the kind of algorithms that work in between and try and filter those for you based on your preferences or your kind of previous history. So that kind of biopolitics of sensory intermediate sort of data is a really interesting area to explore as well.
Yeah, for sure, there
so
is this connection. Thanks, Tom. For sure, there is this connection, healthy connection between the amount of data and so the possibility not to extend our sensoriality and our experience and the surveillance of data. So we come back to the capitalist surveillance that they were spoke before. We have some questions. The first one was from Paolo Quintili. Is a philosophical question. In what sense can we speak of eternal when referring to bodily or physical processes, particularly in the arts, if not in a metaphorical sense? So I think that I can try to answer to the question. Yeah, it's a metaphorical sense, the sense we are using, the adjective eternal, as we are still human, and it's more attention to be something else from what we are still now, until now. So the idea is also to take behavior of other species and try to enlarge our capacity and sensoriality. Then, yeah, for sure, the medicine is going to the direction to make our body always more eternal. That it doesn't mean, that it's for sure a physical sense, that we can take eternal in a real way, we can say. But if you want to, maybe Robertina or also Moon to try also to answer to this question with your experience.
So, like, I think me and Moon, we can both have like lots of to say about this, and like this kind of how to open and make the presence of us more able to understand the environment. I think it's something which is really important, I think from my arts out, I try always to speak about how we can, through more empathic strategies of understanding other, also bring us to understand that, the way how we live now, it's not good, it's very simple, it's like the understanding that all this, what is happening, especially through ecology, geopolitics, name it, it's kind of making more damage than progress lately. So through all these kind of different techniques, I think, like either if you come to see my piece and you have at least something moves in you to rethink, so the gel they're not just like floating somewhere, but they have their own entities, they have their own culture also, if you could say, to understand all this, I think it's something which is really important. I really love when Moon was also explaining, it reminded me a lot on Ursula Le Guin. It's very romantic, I know. But Ursula, in her books, she also refers to this, there is possibility how to become the earth, and how to understand where we walk. And honestly, I was part of one earthquake, big one in Mexico City. And, it's like also it's interesting how the body remembers some things. Like I managed to unplug all the sounds, which is really weird. So I think this is also a question for Tom, how to think about, So there's always interesting how our body reacts in the extreme environments, like, and so on. So, yeah. Maybe I give words to Tom and Moon.
Would you want to go next?
You want to try to answer this question?
Yeah, the question was the philosophical part of the senses. Can you remind?
Yeah,
I've got it here. Shall I read it out?
No,
Okay.
I can read again. Pardon. In what sense can we speak of eternal when referring to bodily or physical processes, particularly in the arts, if not in a metaphorical sense?
Eternal, like to live forever.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Forever young.
I don't know. For me, it's as we always say, no, like even because a lot of the technology they talk about a lot immortality, and for us it's more about trying to live as many lives while you are alive, you know. But yeah, it's about experiencing the reality and trying to get, for me exactly, it's like to get the deeper knowledge of what it's around you.
Yeah. And then there is also a question directly for Moon. As an artist, do you think he needed to add this cyber quality because his art, her art, as it was not so special enough? Instead, with this little technology, it became interesting. So the idea to be an artist, how you decided to be a cyborg artist? You couldn't be an artist without these cyborg implants. Yeah, I think
of course, no, you can be an artist without technology. I started because I wanted to experiment beyond my body. But of course, you can be in a studio and keep dancing and form images. You don't need technology. But I also think that if I want to be contemporary and I want to relate in the world that I live, I think and technology is around us, and it's a new tool that I have as an artist. That's why I guess I started to using it. But as a teenager, actually, I was very against technology. I wasn't interested in technology at all itself. I always found that it was very cold. I wasn't into video games or science fiction. I learned it afterwards when I learned that I could feel the reality that I live in a deeper way. So it's a very personal approach. But I think it's because I live in 2022, I think that's why I use technology. I think if I lived in another era, I would use other tools.
It's also a mean to investigate, no? How could we reinvent technology? As it seems that from our meeting, AI, robotics, and bionic sensor, it's a mean to experience different non-human realities. And so also there is this capacity not to create an horizontal communication with other living species. So it's not the monopoly of the AI and the centralization of AI and data, but an idea to rethink them, no? And to perceive through them other beings and the environment that we are living in. So maybe we can finish, and I want to finish reading a state from Rosa Braidotti, that in her essay, The Post-Human, Beyond the Individual, Beyond Species and Beyond Death, she states, I have no nostalgia for man, the presumed measure of all things, or for the forms of knowledge and self-representation that accompany them. I welcome the multiplied horizons unfolded by the collapse of Eurocentric and androcentric humanism. I interpret the post-human turning point as a happy opportunity to decide together who and what we want to become. And I think that well describe our meeting. So thanks everyone. Thanks to Where Dogs Run, Robertina Šebjanič, Tom Tlalim, Mon Ribas, and Gina Alieva and Humanism. And keep following Humanism and her activities, its activities. Okay, thank you everyone.